a threshold for the abuse that I will take. Now, right now, I'm a f***ing race car, right? And you got me in a red. And I'm just saying that it's fucking dangerous to have a race car in a f***ing red. That's all. I could blow.
Oh, you ready to blow?
Yeah, I'm ready to blow.
Well, I'm a mushroom cloud laying mother. Every time my fingers touch brain, I'm Superfly TNT. I'm the guns of the Navarone.
What's up, folks? Mike for CMCC Builds here with a character for when you just want to blow-ish up.
It's like your beautiful brain exploded all over your face.
If you're wondering what I mean by the thumbnail, allow me a moment to explain. When it comes to optimization and theory crafting, the goal generally is to create the most powerful build possible. And quite often, when doing so, the optimizer will break the game. The coffee lock is a perfect example. Infinite spell slots by cycling warlock spell slots and sorcery points and never taking a long rest so that you don't lose any of the spell slots you created through Font of Magic. Pick a race that doesn't need to sleep or take a long rest so you don't suffer points of exhaustion. Obviously, if you play the game able to cast 5th level spells as if they are cantrips, you've kind of broken it. And despite this build floating around the internet for years now, it's not a build anyone would, or at least should, ever play. I certainly wouldn't. Breaking the game can be fun in theory, but in practice, it's a bad time for everyone. So when I say the most powerful build I'd actually play, this is what I'm referring to. A build that has incredible power but doesn't quite break the game. It gets damn close at times. Being a full wizard with 9th level spells that can also pump out over 300 points of damage in a single Nova round without an attack roll, without a saving throw, really straddles that line. Yeah, armor class doesn't matter. Legendary resistances don't matter. They either have the shield spell, for which you'll have a counterspell ready, or they eat 300. And unlike most single target damage dealing sources, Magic Missile can be spread out to up to 11 targets with a 9th level upcast, although some of the damage bumps no longer apply. The versatility of any full wizard, the single target explosiveness of the Sorlock or fully optimized melee build, the AoE, area of effect, damage dealing potential of the Evoker subclass makes this build incredibly powerful in a multitude of ways. I would never play this with a table of people who aren't strong optimizers. They're just going to get blown out of the water. And it won't be fun for them, and it'll be awkward for you. But if you're lucky enough to have a group of people that all bring strong builds to the game, then this may be an option for you. There are a few different versions of the build. The first known usage of the name Nuclear Wizard comes from this post here, entitled Insane Build, the Nuclear Wizard. From there, the build sort of entered into the community conscience. Ludic Savant built a version that he played all the way to level 20. Colby from D4 did his version as a tribute to Will Wheaton. Tabletop Builds has a version entitled the Hexvoker, and I'm currently playing my own version on the Forge Concordance servers. That's right, this is one of my 2 current builds I'm playing. Before we dive into the details, a quick reminder that if you want to get some nice perks like access to the character sheets for all my builds, or voting on upcoming videos, including this one, which was selected by my patrons, or if you just want to support the channel, I'd ask that you consider joining my Patreon, and if not, please like, subscribe, and comment. I love talking to everyone, hearing your ideas, things I miss, areas to improve, it's all good. Okay, with that, I think it's time we blasted our way into the build. It was alluded to in the intro, but I didn't mention the specifics of the tech and how it makes this wizard different from any other wizard builds out there. And that is the combination of Hexblade's Curse, Empowered Evocation, and Magic Missile. This entire combo hinges on a rule on page 196 of the PHP, and it's, let's call it a clarification by Jeremy Crawford in the Sage Advice tweet here. Rules as written, you roll a single d4, and that number applies to each and every dart from your casting of Magic Missile. If that's 3 darts, or 11, it's still just a single d4 that applies to each force projectile. When I read that, it kind of blew my mind. I've been rolling a d4 for each dart since like 1989 or so.
I'm old, calm.
But it does open the door to some pretty nice combo possibilities. Hexblade's Curse allows you to gain a bonus to damage rolls equal to your proficiency bonus against the cursed target. Empowered Evocation allows you to add your intelligence modifier to a single damage roll of any wizard evocation spell. At level 11, that means each dart from Magic Missile will do its normal 1d4 plus 1, along with a plus 4 from Curse, and a plus 5 from your intelligence modifier. That's 1d4 plus 10 times 3, or 37.5 damage. No to hit, no save. With a 9th level slot, that's effectively 1d4 plus 12 times 11, or 159.5. Again, no attack roll, no save. This is your trump card. You're empty the gun into the big bad moment. But in those cases where you don't want to use it, you'll have plenty of other great options. For the racial selection, there isn't a necessary choice for this build. All the standard wizard races apply. The one I like, and the one I'm playing, takes advantage of the fact that for a build with a massive damage output and excellent range, you want to go first as often as possible. I mean, you almost always want to go first, but when you can realistically end combats or remove the most powerful piece from the board before they can move, it's advantageous to do so. To that end, the racial selection here is one of my favorites, the Harengon. Harengon are rabbit folk, which, quite honestly, I kind of strongly dislike anthropomorphic animals in my fantasy worlds, but at the same time I also kind of like them. It's a real love-hate relationship I have to the flavor of these types of races. When it comes to mechanics, there's no doubt that the Harengon has it going on.
But you got it going on.
Their first big trait is Hair Trigger.
It's a pun.
This allows the Harengon to add their proficiency bonus to their initiative roll. Boom, the best part of the alert feat, which will eventually be a +6 in tier 4, better than alert's +5. And we're not done with the goodies. Leporine Senses gives proficiency in the best skill in the game, Perception. Lucky Footwork gives a D4 with a reaction on a failed dexterity save. And arguably the Harengon's best ability, the Rabbit Hop. Jump 5 times proficiency bonus without provoking opportunity attacks as a bonus action. And this isn't a spell, making it all the more synergistic with a spellcaster. Despite Misty Step being better because it has a range of 30 feet right off the bat, which the Rabbit Hop feature doesn't get until tier 4, and it functions even with a speed of 0 unlike the Harengon's ability, the fact that Misty Step is a spell and Hop is not cannot be understated here. Being able to get out of dodge when surrounded by enemies and then blast them with a fireball or a web spell makes so much better use of your action economy than simply casting one leveled spell with your bonus action and then a cantrip with your main action. With the ability scores, we'll put in 8 in Strength, we're a wizard, a 14 in Dexterity, 13 in Constitution, 15 in Intelligence, we're a wizard, 9 in Wisdom, that hurts, and 13 in Charisma. With the Harengon's racial bonus, we'll put 2 points into Intelligence, bringing that to a 17, and the final point into Wisdom, rounding that off at 10. Another fine option is to take a +1 in 3 abilities and round off Constitution, Intelligence, and either Wisdom or Charisma. Lots of good options here. None necessarily wrong. For your background, try to get the Stealth skill, because Stealth and Surprise are incredibly powerful in this game. Take whatever other skills and tools your party and character needs. Nothing is intrinsic to the build. For starting class, some will recommend going Wizard here, or even Fighter for con save proficiency, but the goal here is to make level 1 as bearable as possible, and to do that, we'll take Warlock. And of course, Hexblade as the otherworldly patron. Survival at level 1 is paramount.
Live, damn it, live!
And having a strong AC goes a long way to making that possible. Hexblade gives proficiency in martial weapons, so you can gish for all of 1 round.
I am the greatest swordsman that ever lived.
And much more importantly, medium armor and shields. It's entirely possible to have an 18 AC right at level 1, with scale mail, a shield, and a +2 bonus from dexterity. Get breastplate or half-plate as soon as possible to drive that AC the highest it can go. If you're a stealthy party, it's probably worth it to drop a point of AC to remove disadvantage on stealth checks from half-plate. Warlocks use pack magic, which means you'll have a single spell slot that is recovered on a short rest rather than a long rest. Hexblades get an extended spell list, which includes Shield and Wrathful Smite. Even though Shield is available to wizards, I would recommend taking that here, as it frees you up to take one of the more diverse options on the wizards list. For your second Warlock spell, I would take Armor of Agathis, as it provides some vitality through temporary hit points, action economy free retaliatory damage, and it's one of the stronger upcasts in the game. And finally, of course, Hexblade's Curse gives the bump to damage rolls, along with a crit on a 19 or 20, which will likely only apply to a cantrip like Firebolt. And if the cursed target dies, you regain hit points equal to Warlock level plus Charisma modifier. That's a whopping 2 right now. Don't expect much out of this. Curse does recharge on a short rest, so along with this, Pack Magic, and Arcane Recovery next level, this build has some decent short rest resilience. At level 2, hop out of Warlock, we got what we need, and move right into Wizard.
I'm a wizard, mind you!
Level 1 gives the aforementioned Arcane Recovery, and it should be noted at this point you have the base pieces for your combo, Hexblade's Curse and Magic Missile. You didn't have to wait long. At level 2 you pick the Arcane Tradition. In my personal build, I don't actually go with the School of Evocation here. Strangely enough, I take War Magic, with the intent of switching to Evocation later in the build. I do this for the added protection of Arcane Deflection and the initiative bump from Tactical Wit. At these low levels, I'm not using very many evocation spells, and even fewer evocation spells with areas of effect. I just don't get a lot out of the subclass until level 6, and the war magic features are significantly more powerful at these low levels. But if you're unable or don't want to retrain your subclass, then here you should take School of Evocation, which provides the Sculpt Spells feature, which allows you to functionally remove friendly fire from your evocation arsenal. 1 plus the spell's level, number of creatures can auto-save against your spell, and take no damage if they would normally take half. With a level 3 fireball, you can effectively remove 4 of your allies from the damage zone, even if they're in the blast radius. If you plan on blowing stuff up with your spells like Thunderwave, Shatter, Fireball, Sickening Radiance, Cone of Cold, Wall of Ice, Prismatic Spray, Sunburst, and Meteor Storm, then Sculpt Spells and A high initiative score make you a significantly more effective player. Wizard 3 brings cantrip formulas, the optional Tasha's feature that allows wizards to switch out their cantrips after a long rest. Use this a lot. If you're gonna have a high RP session, friends may be more useful than something like Create Bonfire. Minor Illusion or Prestidigitation, more effective than Frostbite. If you're gonna face undead, Chill Touch becomes a nice grab. Fire immune enemies, switch out Firebolt and Bonfire. Rumors of trolls up ahead, switch them right back. At Wizard 4 we get our first ASI or feat. Fey Touch for Misty Step and Gift of Alacrity is a very strong option, but here I'm taking Telekinetic. Another half feat, a bit weaker than Fey Touched. But if you're going to use a lot of area of effect spells, being able to move a creature 5 feet may be all you need to get one additional enemy into your AoE. Wizard 6, character level 7. Evokers get Potent Cantrip. This changes Save or Suck cantrips into Save for half, which provides quite a nice resource-free damage bump. This adds about 2.5 to 3.3 damage per target of Toll of the Dead. That damage bump will dip a bit with lower die cantrips like Create Bonfire, and lean towards the upper side of the range, depending on how high the target's saving throw is. At Wizard 8, with the ASI feat Take Resilient Constitution, this rounds off Con to 14, eventually giving 20 additional hit points and more importantly proficiency in Constitution saving throws. This will amount to a +7 to con saves in tier 4. Warcaster is a nice feat, but in terms of strengthening your concentration checks specifically, the advantage that Warcaster provides will give around a +3 to your roll. Resilient Con meets that already, and will continue to scale along with your proficiency bonus. So unless the other two features of Warcaster work well with your build, Resilient Con is likely the better choice, as it is here. At level 11, Wizard 10, you get Empowered Evocation. The combo is now in full effect. Here you go from just a Hexvoker to a full-blown nuclear wizard. Intelligence modifier on a single damage roll along with proficiency bonus on a single damage roll, and a ton of magic missiles all using a single damage roll means you're ready to rock.
Let's do this shit.
I think you need to calm down.
At Wizard 12, level 13, along comes another ASI feat. It's generally a good idea to get all your feats and half feats as early as possible since the power bump tends to outweigh an ability score increase, but after just getting Empowered Evocation, which relies on Intelligence modifier, it makes sense to max out Intelligence right now. A couple more levels to Wizard 14 and Invokers get Overchannel. This allows you to deal maximum damage on a level 1 through 5 wizard spell. This doesn't specify only evocation spells, which gives some nice flexibility to the feature. Using this feature more than once per long rest has some drastic consequences in the form of scaling damage depending on level of the spell cast. Don't use it more than once unless it's the difference between life and death. Spells that deal damage over time will continue to max out each time the spell deals damage for the duration of the spell. Sickening Radiance would then do 40 damage every time a creature moved into the spell's area of effect. Big B's Hand would do 32 damage for every attack that lands. And if you wanted to really optimize toward power, you could do something like take the Orzhov background from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica to get Spirit Guardians as a wizard spell, upcast to 5th level, and now deal 40 damage to each target within 15 feet of you. At level 17, we're going to take our final ASI or feat, and I'm going to suggest Alert here. This will essentially ensure that we win initiative the vast majority of combats, and if we don't, we'll generally be towards the top of the order. If we're going to be a nuclear wizard that explodes on enemies before they can even act, then winning initiative is essential. A +13 is strong enough to win initiative most of the time, but not so ridiculously high as to provide little value at the upper end. In other words, the difference between an 8 and 13 is important enough to make that feat selection useful, despite the fact that the actual value that bump provides is quite a bit lower than going from 3 to 8. Take one more level in Wizard at level 18 to get the all-important and powerful 9th level spells, and at this point we have a decision. If you want to stick with Wizard to get Spell Mastery and another ASI, that is a perfectly reasonable avenue to take, but again, we're a nuclear wizard, we want to explode. To that end, we'll multi-class again out of Wizard and into Fighter for 2 levels. Why? Action Surge, of course, but first we'll take the Defense Fighting style to add an additional point to our armor class. Defense matters too. And at 20th level, the Capstone Action Surge, which allows us to cast 2 ridiculously powerful spells in the same turn. When you need to get that big bad out of the way, bonus action Hexblade's Curse, cast the 9th level Magic Missile, add your Intelligence modifier and proficiency bonus, do a ton of damage, then Action Surge and cast an 8th level Magic Missile with the same bonuses. Kill the bad guy, collect your 2 hit points.
Leave the gun. Technique only.
With the progression covered, let's talk about spell selection. With your Warlock cantrips, you want to take spells that don't rely on Charisma, since that is, and always will be, a 13. This means Eldritch Blast is a no-go. Minor Illusion is right at the top of the cantrip list, and frees up a cantrip on the Wizards list if we take it here. For the second cantrip, there are only a few that don't rely on wisdom. The blade cantrips will rely on either charisma or dex due to attack rolls, so those aren't particularly good choices. Prestidigitation is fine, but I'm going with friends since it also has no saving throw and a use that is different enough for minor illusion that it provides the versatility we want in our cantrips. Wizard cantrips can change after long rests, so take the ones you need for that adventuring day. I will focus on one for a moment, create bonfire. This is a concentration cantrip that takes up a single square and does 1d8 to 4d8 depending on level. That single square, however, can be placed in between 4 squares to potentially affect all 4 squares, effectively making this a 10 by 10 area of effect. That has been confirmed in Sage Advice. Check with your DM. I've had DMs tell me it can only hit 2 squares max, and that's fine, it's still valuable. While you hold concentration, you can use the telekinetic feat or thunder wave to move enemies back into the bonfire. If you have grappling buddies, they can do the same. Got a true Eldritch Blast Warlock in the crew? Have them blast enemies through it. You can also take a cantrip like Lightning Lure to move enemies on your own. Plenty of options. For leveled wizard spells, the staples all apply. Absorb Elements, Detect Magic, Find Familiar, Fog Cloud, and of course Magic Missile, Sleep, Thunder Wave, and Unseen Servant. Find Familiar and Unseen Servant can be used to improve your action economy. The Familiar can provide the help action as a free action to you, and eventually do damage without using any of your actions. The Servant can throw down oil or ball bearings to disrupt enemies or add to the bonfire's area. Thunder Wave, as mentioned, can be used to combo with Bonfire. Level 2, Dragon's Breath can be cast with a bonus action on your Familiar to give it a damaging action that it can use for the entire combat free of any of your actions. It also vibes with the blaster theme of this build. We're skipping Misty Step, even though we didn't take Fey Touch because of Harengon Hop. Instead, Pyrotechnics creates non-magical smoke that can obscure very powerful enemies that rely on sight for spells or abilities. Rhymes Binding Ice because its evocation does damage and it restricts enemies' movement, while costing an enemy action to break free. And then Web because restraining enemies is incredibly powerful. With the big 3rd level spells, Fireball is a must on this build. You're an evoker. Empowered Evocation will apply to everyone caught in the blast. Counterspell is a must grab with this build. If an enemy casts shield on your combo, you need to have a counterspell in your back pocket, or that's going to be a devastating loss for you. Sleet Storm, a strong spell that wreaks havoc on spellcasters and marshals alike by obscuring vision and knocking creatures prone. And finally, one of either Phantom Steed or Tiny Hut as the ritual of choice. Obviously, you're a wizard, get as many spells as possible, especially rituals, into your spellbook and use them all the time. 4th level spells, Dimension Door, since we didn't grab Misty or Thunderstep. This allows you to take an ally with you and doesn't require line of sight, which is huge to go along with some of your other spells. Polymorph, because at this point it's still extremely powerful and potentially life-saving. Turn your dying ally into a giant ape with a massive hit point pool. Sickening Radiance, another evocation spell that deals damage, inflicts exhaustion, prevents invisibility, and can be avoided by your allies through sculpt spells. Storm Sphere is another evocation concentration spell that only uses a bonus action on subsequent turns to attack enemies. With 5th level spells, Big B's Hand and Wall of Force are both evocation and easy grabs. Animate Objects can do wonders to up DPR against enemies that aren't resistant to basic bludgeoning damage. If they have resistance to non-magical attacks though, choose another spell. Wall of Stone, another evocation spell, bears mentioning. It has an interesting clause. If a creature would be surrounded on all sides by the wall, or the wall on another solid surface, if the creature makes a successful dexterity saving throw, it can use its reaction to move up to its speed so that it's no longer enclosed by the wall. This synergizes well with sculpt spells, which allows your allies to auto-succeed on those saving throws. So in addition to being a normal Wall of Stone spell, it can double as a reposition your entire party spell. 6th level spells, Contingency to give you a free 5th level spell slot that autocasts during the designated situation. Scatter, a specific reposition your entire party spell. If you want to impart saving throws to enemies, you can move them around as well. Autoluke's Freezing Sphere, an evocation spell that provides some interesting pre-combat options. You can cast this spell that has a blast radius significantly larger than a fireball, a massive 60 feet. That does similar damage to an upcast fireball, and can be precast, resting in your hand, or even better, your familiar's hand or talon, and thrown during combat. If your familiar or another summon throws it, they use their action, not yours. More action economy effectiveness from the wizard. And finally, Wall of Ice, another evocation spell that does damage equal to Freezing Sphere. It can be broken, and when crossed still does damage, despite being an open area in the wall. With sculpt spells, your allies can move back and forth, forcing enemies to cross the wall's line and continue to take damage each time they do. 7th level spells, Crown of Stars is the first big evocation spell and will continue you down the blasting path if you desire to go in that direction, which we will. Force Cage to just end combats, Simulacrum for when you think we haven't come close enough to breaking the game, and Mirage Arcane when you want to modify the world in a 1 mile radius. For 8th level spells, Maddening Darkness, Maze, Mind Blank, and Sunburst, the first and last on that list both being evocation spells. Mind Blank combos nicely with Maddening Darkness, which works well on parties with blind fighters or upcast continual flames, and of course, sculpt spells. Sunburst does solid damage and blinds enemies and can be sculpted as well. And finally, the big guns, 9th level spells, Meteor Swarm because we blow it up, and Wish, or whatever great spell you want. Go crazy. And that, my friends, is the build.